You're about to watch every single section from the first 3 chapters in my 10-chapter course on how to code in ThinkOrSwim. It takes you from not even having ThinkOrSwim downloaded all the way to creating your first custom study. It's going to take you from not having any knowledge of what code is to a base level understanding of code and beginning to apply it within ThinkOrSwim. Of course, if you already have the ThinkOrSwim platform and you feel very comfortable with your usage of it, you can probably skip about an hour into this video. I will chapter it down below to where the ThinkOrSwim tutorial ends and the coding tutorial begins. But this is obviously a long video. Once again, the first 3 chapters of a 10-chapter course. So if you are interested in getting access to the rest after you watch this, head on over to daytradingstrategies.net, link in the bio down below, click on course, sign up today. But for now, enjoy the education. Welcome to the full ThinkOrSwim coding course. In this course, you will learn how to create any strategy, indicator, or scanner that your heart desires. You will not need any other information other than what is provided within this course to build any custom codes your heart could ever desire. If you look below this video, you will see an entire write-up on this section, and that's how this entire course will be laid out. There will be videos explaining everything for each section, as well as the text write-up for you to read through yourself. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive into section number 1, overview of ThinkOrSwim and ThinkScript. ThinkOrSwim is an active trading software provided by American brokerage Charles Schwab. The only prerequisite for downloading and logging into ThinkOrSwim is that you have a brokerage account with Charles Schwab open. You don't even need to have any money in it to access their active trade software and to perform the coding that will be taught in this course. You just need to have a brokerage account open, as that is what provides you with your login information to ThinkOrSwim, which you are seeing on your screen right now. ThinkOrSwim is a 0 annual fee and 0 commission, as long as you are trading equities, brokerage account. So there are no extra fees involved with using this active trade software to perform your trading. ThinkOrSwim is an all-encompassing platform that provides you, of course, with charting software, with easy drawing tools so that you may perform technical analysis. The active trader window allows for fast and easy trade execution. There is a built-in scanner functionality. You can set up semi-automated alerts. Then, of course, the tool that really takes ThinkOrSwim to the next level, ThinkScript. ThinkScript is ThinkOrSwim's native coding language, which allows you to create custom indicators. It allows you to create custom strategies, which provide you with backtest data. It allows you to create custom coded scanners. It allows you to create custom coded alerts, and so much more. As we move through the rest of this course, you will learn how to read ThinkOrSwim. You will understand each block of code, what it represents, the action it is performing on the screen that you are seeing now, as well as you will learn the building blocks required so that you can build any of these custom studies, strategies, scanners, or alerts yourself. Setting up your ThinkOrSwim workspace. I'm going to start this video on the assumption that you have already created your account with Charles Schwab and downloaded the ThinkOrSwim application. Once you have your login modal popped up, when you click on the ThinkOrSwim, this is what will pop up. We are going to immediately jump into the settings cog and change a setting. This memory usage here will by default be set to very small numbers for both the min value and the max value. Now, what this is doing is it's deciding how much random access memory, or RAM, the ThinkOrSwim application is allowed to utilize. So what you're going to do is you're going to up this min and max value. And once you are logged in to the ThinkOrSwim platform, you're going to open your task manager. You want your ThinkOrSwim application to be running and your memory to be around 50 to 60%. You really don't want to get too high on the memory. Machines can start acting choppy and weird if this gets too high, but you want to make sure that the ThinkOrSwim application is accessing as much of your memory as possible to make it run as smoothly as possible. I have 32 gigabytes of RAM in my machine. It's not the newest version of RAM. It's not the best RAM sticks, but this is how I have mine set up for 32 gigabytes. You'll have to just sort of tweak it and mess around with it yourself. This is all very low stakes stuff, so feel free to just mess with this and change it as you log in to, once again, get that memory usage to around 60%. Now, what I'm going to do here, you have two options, live trading and paper money. For this section and this section only, I'm going to go into the paper money section because I have reset that workspace to default so that it'll look exactly like yours. Of course, I don't want to do that within my live trading platform. So the login ID and password are going to be the same that you created when you set up your Charles Schwab account. If we just give the machine here a second to get logged in, you will notice the home screen that pops up. And from there, we are going to begin setting up our ThinkOrSwim workspace. Yeah, yippee! I have once again reset this all to default. You will notice I am now in simulated trading. You get this sort of yellow border. It obviously yells at you up here. Of course, feel free to use this simulated trading to practice your trading, to practice how to execute within ThinkOrSwim in the future. But for now, we are in the home screen. This is sort of your landing screen dashboard. I don't use any of this. You can set up these widgets however you would like. I don't use any of this stuff. I'm going to hop right into the charts and we are going to begin our chart setup. Actually, first, I almost forgot a very important settings change you need to make. Let's talk about that before we hop into chart setup. If you go to your more global setup, this is your application settings up here in the top right. If you go ahead and click on this, go into the application settings. Under system, ensure that your quote speed is set to real time, no delay. By default, ThinkOrSwim and Charles Schwab set this to a moderate max delay of 3 seconds. Now, this is perfectly fine for most people. Most investors don't need to be seeing real-time tick-by-tick data, and this is how Charles Schwab and ThinkOrSwim sort of ease the load on their servers, right? But for us that are looking to code and become active traders, we, of course, want the real-time, no delay data. So change that setting and apply it. All right, now let's hop into the chart setup. Now listen, there is literally millions of different ways you can choose to set up your charts. What I'm going to do in this video is show you how I set up mine, as well as give you a rough overview of how you can tweak things so that you can sort of decide subjectively how you would like your charts to look. The first thing we need to do is, of course, enter a symbol. You do that here in the top left using your keyboard. We will look at SPY. First things first, we are looking at the daily chart. You can change time frames by clicking this drop down. It gives you a predetermined list of favorites, but you can customize this list using this drop down here. What these lists mean, 1D, 1M, means that you are looking at, if I go click on that time frame actually, the entire chart is 1 day. Each bar represents 1 minute. So with this, the entire chart represents 5 days, right? But each bar represents 15 minutes, so on and so forth. And you can customize this list to look however you would like for your favorite time frames. Okay, now let's hop into the settings on the chart and let's start to walk through some of these appearance settings. Want to turn on from this first general section is show trades. This will on your chart, obviously, after you place buy or sell orders, show them, right? Actually, if I hit apply right now, oh yeah, I've messed around in this paper trading making tutorials before. So from there, you can see now where I was placing buy and sell orders. That's what the show trade setting does. You probably want that turned on. Maybe you don't, but I think it's fun and nice to have on. There's just a lot of other kind of show checkboxes in here. I'm not sure why you wouldn't want to see your orders or studies, but maybe if you're doing a little analysis and they're in your way, you can turn that off. If you don't like this high or low bubble, you can turn that off there. All, once again, completely subjective and up to you. Hopping over now to the price area, this is a fun one where you can sort of decide whether you want your studies to fit or not. I actually turn these off. I don't want my charts fitting studies. What that means is if I were to turn on something like the 200 simple moving average, if I were to turn on the 200 simple moving average on this chart, if I had fit studies and like say I was looking at my chart and I wanted to see it like this, I wanted to kind of really zoom in to these last couple of days, it would stretch the chart out so that this study showed, right? And I don't like it to do that, so I actually do uncheck all of those fit boxes on my price axis. Once again, completely subjective. You decide how you want this to look, but obviously some other stuff you can mess around with. Do you want it to have a little bit of up and down expansion so that you have a little bit of room up and down? All up to you. Hopping over to the time axis, and speaking of expansion, this is a setting I definitely do change. I like to give a little bit of breathing space to the right of my chart. I don't like when my last bar sort of slams into the right wall here. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 4 bars to the right. It's actually a little extremely exaggerated because I zoomed in so much. But you see now how I get that little bit of space to the right. I just think it looks a lot cleaner. That's something that I like to have turned on. Once again, feel free to mess with the rest of this stuff. Do you not want to see these lines? Actually, a lot of times I do turn off these lines. I think it just looks cleaner without them. But if you want to see, you know, what year it is or those kind of things, turn it on or off based on what you like. Favorite time frames, we've already talked about how to get to this drop down through the time frames itself. Appearance, obviously, a big one. I have no idea why by default the green candles aren't filled in. It's a really weird, that's like the weirdest default setting within ThinkOrSwim to me. I don't know why you wouldn't want them filled in, but of course, fill them in. And then also I like my volume colored as the symbol ticks. So if the candle, is green, the volume bar is green. Obviously, if red, the volume bar is red. I don't really like having this grid in the background. I think it just looks cleaner without it. So I'm also going to uncheck that. And if I hit apply, you will notice immediately how much better, at least I think, once again, the chart looks. You can decide all this stuff yourself. Couple more things you can click through. I mean, do you want to see the volume? You probably do. Do you want to see extended hours? This is actually a big one on equities. So, of course, it won't matter from the daily chart, but if I go into an intraday chart, I'm on the 5-minute chart here, you will notice there are 2 different colors, right? This dark sort of black color is your market open hours from 9:30 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right? Then this kind of lighter gray color is after hours from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. is actually a little bit longer because we are looking at an index. Let me go to a normal ticker. From 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. and then from 4 a.m. until 9:30, that is your after hours. And within ThinkOrSwim, you can see the trading occurring during those hours, and you can even trade them. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but if you would rather not see that, a lot of times, a lot of the day trading strategies I use, I don't want the indicators calculating based off of the extended hours trading session. So I will have that turned off, and you'll notice how that just disappears. Alrighty, so now we've got our charts looking the way we want to. Very important next step, come into the style drop down here, and you want to save this style. I will save mine as Trey's style. Sure, great. Now, whenever you open another chart, if I hop into my flexible grid here, and we'll talk about flexible grid actually just in the next section, so don't worry if you're confused. But whenever you open a new chart, it kind of goes to that gross default. Now you can just instantly hop into style, load style, Trey's style, and bang, it immediately looks the way you want it to. Just before we hop into the flexible grid, I want to make sure you all know exactly how to get indicators and drawings on your chart. I showcased it a little bit during that first section, but I want to go over it with you all. So I'm going to click on the studies here in the top tab of the chart. And if I go to edit studies, I can select from a list of hundreds of them. And of course, later in this course, you are going to learn how to create your own. But say I want to turn on the RSI, the relative strength index. If I could not misclick, turn on the RSI, you'll notice how this goes down to the lower section. If I hit apply, that is because it appears down here below the chart, whereas of course you want the SMA plotted on the chart. If I turn on something like volume average, that will also immediately plot to the lower, but I can drag it on to the volume itself. And now you can see that volume average line. This indicator has kind of a gross left axis it turns on by default. So I click into the settings of the indicator and turn off that left axis. Now that just cleans that up a little bit. And let's go ahead and turn on another simple moving average just so I can show you once again from the settings. Say we wanted to turn on the 50. And of course, we'd want it to be a different color so that it stands out. We can change the color in that way. That's how that works. Now, for drawings, you can either click on this drawings here, hover over drawing tools, and select, your trend line, your price level, your Fibonacci retracement, whatever you would like to draw. Or from the chart itself, you can press in on your mouse wheel and it'll instantly pop this up, which is really nice. If I click on price level, I just simply have to double click and it gives me a price level line. Mine is all large and purple and dotted because I have gone into my edit properties. I right clicked on the line into edit properties. From here, you can change all this. Say I wanted it to be a white solid line with a width of 2 that always also expands to the left and the right. Say I want it to be like that. If I go ahead and hit OK, it will do that. But if I draw another line, it's going to do this again, right? So if I hop back into the properties of this one, I can save it as the default. Now every price line I draw will be that way. And if I right click on any drawing, clear drawing set, yes, I can easily get rid of everything. And that's really what you need to know. To draw a trend line, you click once, you click again, you can come in and sort of fix all this up. Yes, I want it to extend to the right. I want it to be yellow and thinner. Set it up like that. Save that as the default. So anytime you draw a line, of course, that happens. So the flexible grid, the first thing of importance to talk about here is how ThinkOrSwim is laid out. It is not fully modular in that you can drag these charts and put them anywhere, right? It's all sort of like a box. This can all be dragged into different size rectangles, but once again, they cannot be dragged and placed anywhere on the chart. Now, when you first open up your flexible grid, you will see this sort of small box in each one of your charts. This button is to add a chart below. This button all the way to the right is to remove that chart. And then this button here is to add a chart to the right. And you can either have on your sidebar or have it turned off. We'll talk about the sidebar and what that does in just a second. But the way I like to have my flexible grid laid out is I like to have 2 up top and 2 down bottom. I'm going to make it so that it's about 50-50 on the up and down, and then so that the upper left is smaller and the lower right is smaller. Now, let's go ahead and talk about this sidebar. there are multiple different functions that you can have active on a chart. The most important, the ones you really need to know about, are the active trader. This is the application, this section that allows you to place your trades. You can have on your level 2, which I won't lie, the level 2 within ThinkOrSwim is not amazing. What a level 2, a full level 2 will do is show you all the bids and asks available at each price. What the level 2 within ThinkOrSwim is doing is just showing you the largest bid and ask from whichever exchange it is at that price. So not all that useful, but possible to have on. There is this news here that will show you any news specifically for the column that you, or sorry, for the ticker that you have typed in. And then you can also come up here and go to this time and sales, which will show you orders either hitting the bid or the ask in real time. Now, what I'm going to do, so I guess the first thing I have to do is populate all these charts. I'll just type in MU in all of them for right now. The way I'm going to have mine set up, I like this top left chart to be the daily. This gives me my large overview picture of what I'm looking at on the chart, of what the chart has been doing lately, of what the daily trend of the chart I'm looking at is. I like to make this chart my 5-minute, and then I like to make this chart my 1-minute. If you can't tell, if I haven't explained it already, this is sort of my more day trading type setup, right? This is where I have my setups for when I want to analyze multiple time frames at the same time. Now, what I do with this bottom right chart is I turn off the chart completely. This is where I have my active trader. So you can do that as well, right? I don't want to see the chart at all down here. I just want to see the active trader so that I can see my daily sort of trend, look at a slightly larger time frame here, and then get my most micro analysis on the 1-minute before I place my trades here. Now, first thing to change, what do we talk about with this chart? Let's go ahead and load in our style on both of these charts as well. If I load style, oh, it does take it back to the saved time frame as well. So let's go back to our 5 in our 1-minute. Now, the next important thing I want to talk about is this link functionality. I'm going to link these all to the same link, this red one here. That's going to make it so that whenever I change the symbol, say I want to look at NVIDIA instead, it changes all the charts to NVIDIA and, of course, the active trade window. Also, I don't like to have my sidebars turned on once I'm all set up. Don't really need to see them anymore. This gives you a little bit more room and a little bit more cleanliness on the charts. Then I'm going to come to this multi-grid up here, and I'm going to turn off the customized grid to get rid of those boxes. And now my flexible grid is set up, and I'm ready to trade. Now let's talk trade execution, and in talking trade execution, we need to talk active trader window. These are all of your default buttons. You can expand this little arrow here down to see your second line. You're by default set up with buy market and sell market. If you would rather have a limit orders, which I know a lot of people do, or if there's other buttons you'd like to add or remove from this, you're going to click on this cog here within the active trader. Say I want to get rid of buy and sell market. I simply double clicked on them. It moved them back over here. I instead want to be buying the bid and selling the ask. That's how I would want to trade. I want to use those sort of limit orders in my trading. So I'm going to add them. By default, they're added to the end. They can be grabbed and dragged to wherever you would like them to be. If I hit OK, you will now notice buy bid, sell ask on the chart. This button here is cancel. If you click that button, it's going to give you a drop down of what you would like to cancel. I'll tell you what I do. I instead replace that with the cancel all button. That's the oh shit, my computer started lagging a little bit. I need to just cancel all my open orders. Bang, you can click that button and get that done. Reverse, don't need. Flatten, I also leave on. Flatten is also sort of the oh shit button, but when you're in a trade. What flatten does is it will market exit any position you're in, close all open orders. So that's also another good button to have on in case something sort of hits the fan, right? Next, we can hop down to the second line and begin to look at these buttons. Of course, you want your quantity with buttons turned on. Now, while this section isn't fully customizable, you can hop into your setup application settings again and set up some order defaults. So if you'd rather the default order be 100 instead of 150, and then you'd rather your increment be by 10 instead of 100, if I go ahead and hit apply now, you will see this is set up at 100. And I'm not exactly sure what the order increment means. Like, why is it 100, 300, 500 when I set it up as 10? Honestly, don't ask me, but you can come in and you can mess around with those settings to sort of find what works best for you. Next, we're going to come down to this order template selector, which is important if you want to set different order types. If you're just going to buy and sell, you really will never change this from single, but you can set up OCO orders, which will set up multiple orders, and when one fills, all others will cancel. That's what OCO means. And then these targets with brackets allow you to set up, I can set up a buy with a profit target and a stop loss based off of either value, ticks, or percentages. And you know what? Let me just go ahead and hit buy and show you what that looks like. So I'm trying to buy 100 shares at the bid here on NVIDIA right now. Oh, look, I got filled. Yay. Now I have my stop and my profit target both set up because I placed a target with brackets trade. I believe I set them both up as a 1% up and 1% down, but, and this is maybe skipping forward ahead a little bit into the order execution, but I'll give you a little preview of what's coming up in the next section. These can just be dragged. So say I'd want to get stopped out if NVIDIA breaks below this low, great. I'd want to sell if NVIDIA breaks above that high, great. So that's your order template button, and that is, once again, a little sneak peek to order execution within ThinkOrSwim. Oh, you know what? Let me show you this too. Hey, I've got this order open. Oh my God, the lightning just hit, my internet's starting to flicker, my router's starting to go out. If I hit flatten, you will notice, oh, I'm getting a pop-up. This will cancel all orders. Wait a second. If I turn on auto send and hit flatten, I just learned something in making my own course. You have to have auto send turned on if you don't want your flatten popping up a little confirmation box. Look at that. That was fun. Also, okay, you know what? Let's use all of this. Screw it. We'll do it live. The next thing I was going to talk about is auto send anyway. Did you all notice how when I was placing those trades, I got that little order confirmation box to pop up? If you are actively trading, especially a 1 minute chart, if you're going to be doing this kind of trading, you probably don't want an order confirmation box, an extra 2-3 clicks when you're trying to take a trade. So have the auto send button turned on, once again, within your active trader settings. And now when I hit buy, the trade will automatically attempt to go through. While an order is out, you can hit this X on the order itself to cancel, or you can hit this cancel button to cancel the open order. And I went ahead and got filled on another trade when trying to make that suggestion. So now you'll get to see an example of me hitting sell ask. We'll see if I get filled there. We do, and it auto sent once again because of this checkbox. All right, so the final sort of button change I'm going to make from within the settings on my active trader is I'm going to add a button called TIF. What this stands for is time and force. And if you are placing regular trades during market hours, time and force set today is perfectly fine. If you are placing a swing trade order, say I want to buy NVIDIA if it sells at 118, that's where I want to buy. You would want to set that up as a GTC if you would like that order to remain open until you cancel it. GTC stands for good till canceled. If you place that order with a daily time and force, it would simply cancel at the end of the trading day. So if you want an order like that to remain open, you place it as a GTC. And as we talked about earlier in this chapter with after hours trading, remember when I showed you the after hours chart? If I go back into my settings here quickly and just turn this on for you, this section of trading, you can place trades. ThinkOrSwim is open from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m., so the entire after hours, and then it opens trading in the morning at 7 a.m. So you won't get the entire pre-market because pre-market opens at 4 a.m., but ThinkOrSwim trading starts at 7 a.m. So if you would like to trade either after hours or pre-market, your time and force needs to be set to extended. And another tip with that, we've already got ours set up this way, but if you are going to be trading extended hours, you must be trading limit orders. There are no market orders allowed during after hours trading. Now, let's talk this lower section of the active trade window. Of course, you got to sort of see this section in action. This represents the number of shares you've bought and sold today. This would represent your position once one was currently open. I'll just go ahead and buy some more so you can see here. Of course, this is paper trading. Who cares? If I can get filled, please. This will represent the position that I am in. Let me just move this up. This will represent the position that I'm in if I go ahead and get filled. Thank you very much. This will represent the position I'm in. I'm in 100 shares at $123.69. This is my current P&L of the trade I am in. And then this is the P&L on the day. On just this ticker alone, though, this is how much I am up or down on all the trades I have taken on it today. You'll notice as I go to sell this trade, all of these will hop back to blank. This will go to 300 by 300. And look at me go. I'm up $11 in my paper trading account. If we go down to the lower section, this is called your trade ladder. All of these are resizable. On a larger stock like this, it looks like you need to resize it so you can actually see the price. And what this is representing, of course, obviously, the current price that the underlying ticker is currently trading at, and then the bids and the asks at the local price. So you won't see like a full bid and ask depth on this chart, but you can see the current bids and asks around the price we are currently trading at. Now, you can also execute orders directly from within this window. Say, I would want to buy if NVIDIA drops down to the low 123s. Call it 123.2. I'd want to buy 100 shares. Here from within the bid size, if I simply click and it will buy whatever quantity I have typed in here. If I simply click, once again, because my auto send is turned on, it automatically throws that trade out at 123.20. As I showed you earlier, if I change my mind, hey, I want to buy a little bit lower actually, because that's down where that is, I can go ahead and just drag and drop the order once it's on the chart as well. Or of course, I can cancel the order. Also, you can use this to place buy stop orders. Hey, I want to buy NVIDIA if it breaks over 124. I can go up here and I can put an order at 124. Oh, I'm still on extended. Sorry. It let me place the limit order, but not a buy stop order, because a buy stop order, of course, is a market order type, and you can't place those under the extended time and force as I aforementioned. Look at that segue to example. If I hit an order buy at 124.01, this is now a stop order, as you see represented by the STP. Now, this will only execute if NVIDIA breaks through, or at least touches and fills my order, at 124.01. Next, let's go ahead and get into a trade so that I can show you how to do something similar with stop loss orders. Hey, I just got long at 123.52. I want to get stopped out if we break below 123. I simply click now, of course, on the ask size as I am selling, not buying. I will get stopped out at 122.99. And of course, to wrap up this section, put it all together, I changed my mind. Let me just get out of the trade. hit flatten, finish the day up $8 whole. Let's go. From here, hey, I made $8 today. We can go ahead and click on the monitor window and we can see, looking at the filled orders here, all the trades we took today, of course, in our simulated trading account. If you had any open orders, let me actually go put one so you could see. If we have open orders, they show here under the working order section. And then if we go ahead and cancel this order, that will show up. Go away, please. That will show up along with all the others under this canceled orders section here. But really, and most importantly, this is how you keep track of your total P&L on the day if you were to be trading multiple different tickers, because remember, this P&L on the day is only representative. If I change to a different stock, it's only representative of the ticker you're looking at. Whereas if we now take a trade on Tesla as well, if I can get filled here, drag this up. I don't even know if I showed that functionality, by the way. So sort of some real-time extra functionality. You can drag your orders straight from the trade ladder as well. If I were to take a trade on Tesla here, make $3 whole, I can now go back to my monitor window, see both of these trades, see their total together equals $11 up. Another cool functionality and something I actually do take advantage of that I want to show is this button here from your monitor window. This is a detach button. If I click on this, it opens a whole new tab. So I trade with 3 monitors. So the way I normally trade is that I have my monitor window detached and over here on my left monitor, so that while I'm trading on my main screen all day, I can see my total P&L. This sort of detach functionality, I don't know exactly everywhere that it can be used here on scanners as well. I believe you can detach charts as well. Yes, so that is a way that you can open up new ThinkOrSwim windows so that you can sort of make it more modular, drag them around, put them on different monitors, set up your screen a little bit more customized. So I just clicked on the scanner tab, so let's go ahead and hop into this section next. Now, there is an entire chapter down the road in this course on full scanner customization, even coding, custom study, filter conditions for scanners. So we're not going to dive too deep into scanners right now, as that will come later in this course, but I just want to make sure during this ThinkOrSwim tutorial section, you at least know how they work and their basic setup functionality. So I'm going to clear all of the default filters just so we can go ahead and add some of our own. If I add a stock filter, I want to look at stocks. You get a full drop down here that you can come in and explore yourself. I want to look at stocks that are between $1 and $5. That is the price range that I would like to trade. I can add another stock filter. They must be trading at least 250,000 shares of volume. And then I can add another stock filter where the market cap must be no bigger than 50 million. If I type in 123, no bigger than 50 million on the market cap. If I ran this scanner, I'd of course be returned a list of 284 stocks. Your columns here are also customizable. There is a very tiny little cog here you can click on and customize. And just like the active trade window buttons we sort of went through, there is a ton of different columns that you can set up and add and customize. And once again, these are all draggable. If you want to get rid of something, you simply double click on it, move something up, move something down. That is how this whole thing is customizable. Once again, not going to do too much with it right now. Just want you to know it is. And of course, you can sort your results by header. I typically, on almost all of my scanners, sort top down by volume. Now, say I want to save this scan query as my low price. I'm just going to call it low price. I don't know what else to call it. I've gone ahead and saved that. Now, this sort of left-hand drawer has been open over here during this entire tutorial. First off, you can click on this arrow and close this. It gives you more realty, more chart space. This is normally how I trade unless I am actively watching a watch list, for lack of a better term. So I'm going to collapse the Trader TV for right now, collapse the live news, and collapse the quick chart. You can, of course, also delete these gadgets if you do not want to look at them. You all can't see it in the way I have my screen laid out. I'm sorry. Can I fix that really quick, actually? Some live editing here. Look at that. If I hover over this little plus down here, you can add widgets. So if I wanted to add multiple different watch lists, I can do that. Obviously, of course, all kinds of other stuff you can mess with here. A little bit subjective. Add and set it up how you want. But the point I'm trying to get at now, what did I call that? Did I call it slow price? I think I called it. If I go into my personal, I can hover over low price. I can see the results that are popping up from the scanner we just created. I can once again customize the columns from within this little scanner watch list on the left-hand side as well. So if I add the volume and once again sort top down by volume, that is fantastic. And look, there is also a link functionality here. So remember how we linked all of these charts together earlier to red? Now, if I also link this scan on the left to red, as I click through these stocks, they will auto-populate into these charts that have the same link number and color. So now, from my flexible grid, from my intraday trading kind of analysis and active trade window, I can be clicking through stocks appearing on a watch list, looking for trade opportunities. Back on my daily large chart here, looking at Apple. Say I would like to know if Apple breaks below 210 on its daily chart, because I might consider buying it below that level. I can right click at about that price and hit create alert. That will try to create an alert at exactly the price I right clicked. I, of course, could fine tune that if I want it to be exactly 210. You can then choose either at or above or at or below when the price hits. I will be alerted. Of course, I want it below 210. So I'm going to go ahead and create that alert. Now, whenever that happens, I'm going to both get a little pop-up in the top left here and also a message in my messages folder so that I will know, hey, Apple has broke below 210. If I hop into my Market Watch tab here and go to alerts, I can also see all of my open alerts. And one more thing, if I right click this and go to alert notifications, you can set it up to make a noise when it goes off and to send you an email and a push notification to your mobile device, which you set up, of course, through your Charles Schwab brokerage. So if you would like more, hey, alerts when, Apple does break below 210, set up your notifications in that way through the Market Watch tab. Say I want to be alerted instead if Apple closes below the 200 simple moving average, which I have plotted on this chart. I'm going to once again right-click alert, but now I'm going to go to study and edit. And if I hop into the edit here again, I want to be alerted if the closing price is less than if I go to study, as the moving average is a study, if I look up simple moving average with a length set equal to 200, I will now be alerted if Apple closes less than the 200 simple moving average. I can go ahead and create that alert, hop back into my Market Watch alerts tab, and you will see that alert is also open, currently false. I will be triggered with the email and with the push notification once that does become true. This scanner that we just created, this low price scanner, I can left click on this name of the scanner from my left-hand drawer, and I can be alerted when a symbol is either added or removed or both. I want to be alerted when a symbol is added in my low price scan. If I go ahead and create that, of course, I just made the scanner today, so it's giving me all the stocks that have been added to it today. But if I hop into my Market Watch tab, this one will remain active until I cancel it. So now anytime a ticker is added to this low price scanner, I will be alerted. If I want to cancel this or any of my other alerts, I can do it from within my Market Watch Alerts tab just by clicking on that little cancel there, or I can turn it back on by hitting that little refresh action there. If you think that stuff's cool, there's about 100 other ways you can set up alerts within ThinkOrSwim, but we have a whole alert section coming up later in this course, so you'll just have to keep pushing, and we'll get into some of that more advanced stuff down the road. And I just want to show you this section. We're not going to talk about it too much really in this course at all, but this is where you can trade options from within ThinkOrSwim. Under the Trade tab, under All Products, type in whichever ticker you would like to look at the options chain for here. Then, of course, this is your options chain. Any of these can be, of course, expanded. You can see as many strikes as you would like to. You can actually type in anything here. You can change your layout view if you want to see the value of the Greeks, of the underlying, etc., etc. I just want you, for the purpose of this video in this section, to want to know how to access the options chain within ThinkOrSwim. Basic coding terminology and concepts. We can't begin writing our own ThinkScript codes until we can talk about and understand what is going on within the code. So in this chapter, we are going to cover everything that you're seeing going on within this script so that moving forward, when we are discussing codes we are creating, you will understand the terminology. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new study, and it's going to bring up a sort of demo line of code, and we can use this first line of code to talk through our first few coding terminology concepts. The first is variable. In this line of code, the word data represents the variable. A variable is a storage component that we create, that we declare in order to store a value. We are declaring this variable in this instance with the word plot. There are a few different ways within ThinkOrSwim you can declare variables. For right now, we're going to skip over that. I will get to that in a minute. So we are declaring, using the word plot, our variable, which we are calling data, and variables can be named whatever you would like for them to be named, as long as they don't match already existing keywords. So I can name this happy birthday if I want to. The variable can be named anything. Then we are initializing the variable by setting it equal to a value. So once again, defined the variable, initializing the variable by setting it equal to a value. We mentioned that there were multiple different ways a variable could be declared within ThinkOrSwim. First, let's talk on this plot keyword declaration. What this is going to do, if not obviously, is going to plot the value stored within that variable on the chart itself. So as I hit apply with this custom study running, you will see the closing value of each bar being plotted on the chart once again, because the happy birthday variable was declared using the plot keyword, and then the happy birthday variable, I should have named it something less funny, was initialized with the value of close. Another way that we can declare variables within ThinkOrSwim is the word input. I am going to declare a variable with the keyword input. I'm going to name the variable position size, and then I'm going to initialize it with a value of 5,000. What this is going to do, if I hit apply and OK, now on the settings of the strategy itself, there is a list of inputs. And now from this list of inputs, you can easily change the value. This is a very popular input that I utilize in a lot of my trading strategies, because now you can come in and easily change the position size so that when this is called throughout the rest of the code, you will now be trading at a 15,000 size rather than 5,000 size. Now, I want you to notice that when you change the input from the input screen, it's not actually changing the code, right? Anytime you now run this code on your chart, it will pull in this input, but the source code itself will not change. Next, and finally, the last way that you can declare a variable within ThinkOrSwim is with DEF, which stands for define. So if I declare a variable with the keyword DEF, I'm going to name the variable X. I'm going to initialize it with a value of 15. Any variable that is properly defined within ThinkScript can be called throughout the rest of the code. I'll show you examples of that here in just a second. And that is all that the DEF or the define declaration keyword is doing. So if you simply want to initialize a variable to be called throughout the rest of your code, you would use define. If you don't need it to be on the input list, if you don't need it to be plotted on the chart, you would simply define it. Back to a blank script here. I want to go ahead and put this all together while introducing you to the next bit of terminology, which is going to be functions. I want to plot on my chart a simple moving average with a length equal to 200. That's my goal. That's my idea when creating this script. And knowing that, I am going to declare a variable. I'm going to name the variable MA length, and I'm going to initialize that variable with the length of 200. And you will notice I declared using the keyword input. I want this to show up on the inputs list. Next, we are going to plot a variable. I'm declaring this variable with the keyword plot so that it will show on the charts. I'm going to name this MA, and now we're going to do something different. I'm going to call a function. A function represents a set of stored calculations provided to you by ThinkOrSwim itself. And in the context of ThinkOrSwim, this, for the most part, is your studies. Any study that exists out of the box, and there are hundreds of them, simple moving average, RSI, MACD, stochastic, anything you can think of, you do not have to create over again when writing a script. You simply have to call the pre-existing out-of-the-box functions for them. So I'm going to call the function simple moving AVG. Whenever you call a function, you must open and close parameters. And I haven't mentioned this yet, but you've seen me doing it. Whenever you're done with a line of code, you must write a semicolon in. Great. Now, if I hit apply, you're going to get a simple moving average plotted on your chart. But this is not the 200 simple moving average. We have not told any values into this function for what to plot. How you find the names of functions, such as how I knew to name that the simple moving AVG, is you navigate to the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center, which you can simply Google, and then under Technical Indicators, ThinkOrSwim has every single function for every single study laid out within this free website. Very, very nice. Say I wanted to add the RSI, I could come in and see everything I needed to know about the RSI. But for right now, going back to the simple moving average function, we're going to jump now into another terminology, another concept that you must understand. Every function, what did I say a function was? It is a collection of an equation, right? It is a stored equation that you may call into your own code. Well, every equation has a list of variables that can be changed within it, right? In coding, those variables are called parameters. Every function has a set of parameters that you can change. Also, within ThinkOrSwim, every single function comes with a default set of parameters. Back within our ThinkOrSwims, you can see that default set of parameters and, not to mention, the function names themselves. See how within ThinkOrSwim, this is called Simple Moving AVG. If I click on this to turn it onto my chart quickly and click into the cog, does this look very similar to those input parameters we just saw on the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center? This is how you can see what, first off, the name of the function is, the list of the parameters, and the default values of those parameters. So remember, back in our own code now, we wanted to create a simple moving average with a length equal to 9. So if we hop back into our code, a length equal to 200, the default value is 9. We want to change that. That is why we declared a variable as an input and initialized it with a value of 200. Now, I want to change the length parameter. So within the parentheses, this is why in a function, when you declare a function, you must open and close parentheses. That's how the computer knows, hey, this is a function, utilize its default parameters if nothing else is entered, right? But we are about to enter something. I'm going to type in length, and then I'm going to call my variable that I defined already within my code. I can call in, as we went over when speaking about variables, I can call that in. And this is good coding practice. It's not good coding practice to have values anywhere else in your code other than where you are initializing them, for a lack of a better word, within the variables up top. It helps keep the code cleaner. It helps clean up any errors down the road. It makes them easier to find. It makes testing easier. It's just good coding practice to have your variables spread throughout your code by declaring them at the top within a variable first. Anyway, let's use our terminology that we've learned here. We have declared the MA variable using the keyword plot so that it will show up on the chart. We have initialized the MA variable with a value that is a function with a parameter of length set equal to the MA length variable, which we earlier declared as an input and initialized with the value of 200. If I hit apply now, this is the 200 simple moving average being plotted on the chart. Next bit of terminology is operators. There are three types of operators. There are arithmetic operators, your plus, minus, multiply, divide, comparison operators, equal to, not equal to, greater than, or less than, and logical operators, and or not. For right now, we're just going to cover arithmetic operators, as we'll cover the other two types in conjunction with the next bit of terminology we will cover. So I'm going to declare a variable with the keyword plot as I want this to show on the charts. We are going to name the variable X. We are going to initialize the variable with a value of 2 multiplied by 250. We're going to end the line of code with a semicolon. If I've done this correctly, a value of 500 should be plotted on the chart. And this is an example of arithmetic operator. Lastly, for this section, we are going to cover conditional statements using the if-else statement. So what am I going to do? I'm going to declare a variable with the keyword plot as I want it to show on the chart. We are going to name the variable y, and then we are going to initialize it with a value. Now we are going to give this a few different possible value combinations by utilizing the if conditional statement. If, and let's go ahead and go through some ideas here. If the current bar close, and I should stop here for a half second, whenever you are calling price action levels, the 4 values provided to you by a price candle, close, open, high, and low, these are predefined variables. They are functions that require no parameters because they are simply values provided to you by the current candle, right? So you actually don't need to have open close parentheses here as you do with other functions like the simple moving average. So we can simply say if the current bar close is greater than MA, remember, we have already declared a variable MA and initialized it as the 200 simple moving average. So we can now call this variable in other lines of our code as long as they are after where we declared the variable, right? Which in this case, obviously it is. So we call that down. If the close is greater than MA, by the way, greater than, this is that comparison operator that we just spoke about before. This is back to our operators, comparison. Let's go ahead now and use a logical operator of and if the current bar high is greater than 500. So if the close is greater than the 200 simple moving average and the high is greater than 500, then the value of y is going to be 2 times 500. Let's do 2 times 250 so that it plots at 500. Else, we want it to be 1 times 400. So if the close is greater than the 200 simple moving average, and once again, this being our logical operator, so these are your two operator examples I said I would get to, your comparison operator, your logical operator. You don't have to memorize that as long as you understand they are operators. And if the high, once again, using another comparison operator, is greater than 500, then y, the variable y, will be plotted, because we declared the variable with keyword plot, at value 500, 2 times 250, arithmetic operator, else 1 times 400, arithmetic operator, it'll be plotted at 400. If I hit apply, this is going to be a nonsensical study, but the point of this is not to make sense. It's to try to help you understand the terminology and concepts. Where SPY is both above the 200 simple moving average and the high is above 500, we are plotting at 500. Where that is not true, we are plotting at 400. Now, just to wrap this section up, if you are confused right now, that is perfectly okay. We are definitely jumping ahead in where you're expected to be in your codified education right now. You're not really expected to understand these lines of code at this point. The point of this section is to make sure we are laying the foundation for the terminology. So in the future, when I'm saying things like declaring a variable or initializing a value, or if I'm saying that I'm calling a function and giving it different parameters and then using the conditional if statement, I just want you to now have that information, hopefully after this section, in the back of your head so that I'm not speaking Chinese. Once again, if you don't understand this code, that's fine, as long as you're beginning, very early stages of beginning to understand some of the words I'm throwing at you when talking through and parsing through this code. Writing your first ThinkScript code. We went a little bit hard in the last section on code. We sort of already wrote our first one. So what I'm going to do with this section is I'm going to use this as sort of a checkpoint for your knowledge. I'm going to quiz you all a little bit just to see where you stand with your knowledge after the last section. You've seen me do it a handful of times already in this course, but I just want to make sure I specifically walk through how you get to the create a new study modal. If I click on studies, edit studies, while I am under the studies subtab and hit create, that is how I create a new study. If I go under the strategy subtab, that would be how I create a new strategy. We're not quite there yet. Just wanted to make sure you know. But if I were to hit create here, I have a new script modal open in which I can change the name of and obviously begin our ThinkScript coding. The first thing I would like you to do is to plot on your chart a simple moving average with a length of 14. You can pause the video here, give it a chance to try for yourself, and then I will go ahead and do my version of the code. Now, if you coded this solution like this, turn the plot data into simple moving average with a length equal to 14, that is perfectly fine. It will work as expected. It will plot the 14 SMA on the chart. Just remember that it is a good coding practice to initialize your values at the top of the chart rather than hard code them inside of your functions. This helps with readability. It helps with maintainability. It helps with ease of updating. There's a lot of reasons why you would rather initialize these sort of constants inside of variables at the top of the code. So the way I would build it, I would build an input of MA length equal to 14, and then I would call that MA length, I would call this MA length variable as my parameter inside the simple moving average function. And then, of course, just remember, since we set that as an input, also an extra added bonus within ThinkOrSwim that makes it very, very easy to change from directly within the settings on the strategy rather than having to go into the source code itself. So just another reason why initializing variables rather than hard coding is a good idea. Next, we're going to get a little bit trickier. I want you to plot the RSI with a length equal to 5. I'll give you all a second if you'd like to pause the video. Now, hopefully what you did here is the process that I showed earlier in how to find the names and parameters of a function. You can look up RSI within your edit studies modal. Obviously, RSI would be the name of the function. That's good to know. You can then click in and see that there is a parameter of length, which is defaulted to 14, but I asked for 5 in our study code example. So the most obvious solution would be to initialize our data variable with the function RSI and set the length parameter equal to 5, correct? And this is exactly how you should plot the RSI with your current knowledge of ThinkScript. But I gave you all this code example for a reason. I'm going to use this as a teaching point for 2 separate things. First, let's go ahead and run this code. You will notice it is plotting the RSI value on the chart. Now, I taught you all earlier that you can drag this down to the lower, and that would be correct, right? But a better and easier way to do that, if you are building something like RSI, or really anything that you would like to show on the lower section below your price chart, you can go ahead and make the first line of your code declare lower. If you type that in, it will always have the study as a lower study. So that's how I would start if I were to plot an RSI length of 5, that is a line of code I would use to start it. Next, we set the parameter length equal to 5 within our RSI function, which is the initialized value of our data variable that we declared using the keyword plot so that it would show on the chart. I just wanted to run through all that to update you all on our terminology from the last section. Something you need to know about parameters is that since length is the first parameter of RSI, if I once again open the RSI settings, length is the first parameter. If you are typing the parameters in the order that are expected within the function, then you do not need to call the name of the parameter. So you could simply type in RSI 5, and since the machine is expecting to look for length first when it is checking the parameters of RSI, this will still work as expected. So this is how I would solve the solution to plotting the 5 RSI on our charts. I've got a trade idea. If the current bar close is above the 200 SMA, then I want to look to buy off of the 20 SMA. So I want you to build a study for me that plots the 200 SMA unless the current bar is closing above that value. If it is closing above the 200 SMA, then I want you to plot me the 20 SMA. Hopefully you all had a chance to pause the video, give this one a try for yourselves. If you couldn't quite figure out the solution to this one, please don't get down on yourself. This is a very complex problem for someone at your stage of ThinkScript education, right? But I wanted to challenge you all, make you think, and hopefully, even if you couldn't figure it out, watching my solution will help teach you something. So, we want to be plotting the 200 simple moving average if the current price is below that level, or if the current price is closing above that level, we want to be plotting the 20 simple moving average, right? What's the first thing we need to do in order to meet good coding practices? We need to initialize these values inside of stored variables so that we can be calling those variables rather than hard coding them in our conditions, once again, to improve maintainability and upgradability of the code. So I'm going to declare a variable using input so that it appears in our input list. I'm going to name this variable, if I can get my mouse to work correctly. I'm going to name this variable short MA with a length of 20, and I'll initialize another variable named long MA with a length equal to 200. Now, maybe obvious, maybe not, we need to use a conditional statement of if here. If the current bar close is less than the 200 simple moving average. So remember, the simple moving average, this is the function. The parameter we want to call in is our long MA variable that we already initialized with a value of 200, right? So we're going to name this parameter of length equal to long MA. If that is true, then the value that should be plotted under the data variable should be that same simple moving average with a length equal to long MA, right? If the current price is closing less than the 200 simple moving average, we want to see the 200 simple moving average. But if we are above that 200 simple moving average, we want to plot the 20 simple moving average and look to use that as support for our trade idea instead. So remember, when there's an if, there should be an else. So whatever else should be happening if this statement is not true, in this case, if the close is greater than or equal to the simple moving average, we want the value of our data variable to be the simple moving average with a length equal to short MA, which is our variable that we have initialized at the value of 20. If I go ahead, apply OK, you should now see whenever the current price is below the 200 simple moving average, you can tell here and here where it's moving a little slower, we are below that level. When it gets above, it turns into the 20 simple moving average for a faster sort of support area. That does it for chapter 1 of the How to Code in ThinkOrSwim course. In this chapter, you learned what ThinkOrSwim is, everything you need to know about how to set up your ThinkOrSwim platform, the basic terminology and concepts of coding as a whole, and then we even practiced some real practical ThinkScript codes. Hopefully you all are excited to move in to the next chapters, really take this thing to the next level, really up your coding education and the types of studies, strategies, scanners, and alerts you will be able to make. Plotting advanced indicator. So we just learned how we can plot ThinkOrSwim out-of-the-box studies onto a custom coded study. Well, in this section, we're going to step that up a little bit. We're still going to use the out-of-the-box existing study functions so that we're not quite to the point where we're creating our own custom functions yet, but we're going to dive a little deeper into how we can combine these out-of-the-box function studies within a custom study. So let's go ahead and jump into a new study, and let's plot two moving averages on the chart. This is a little bit of a refresher from where we were at the end of the last course, where we did plot one moving average using a conditional statement. Let's go ahead and just showcase how we can combine multiple studies into one custom study as a little refresher. First things first, what do we do for good coding practice? We input the lengths of the moving averages. I'm going to go ahead and do a 20 and a 50 for this example. So I'm going to input my short MA variable, and I'm going to initialize that with a variable length of 20. And then we are going to declare a long MA variable initialized at a value of 50. Then, as you all know, we are going to plot. Then we're going to use the keyword plot to define our variable. Let's go ahead. We'll leave it named data. That's fine. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a simple moving average with a length equal to the short MA length variable container that we've already created. And then if we plot data 2 set equal to the simple moving AVG with a length equal to the long MA, this should now be our 20 SMA. This should now be our 50 SMA. And by the way, using the hash symbol is how you write comments in your code. I think I accidentally deleted my semicolon. This is how you write comments in your code. So the machine won't attempt to use whatever is written after a hash at all. It's simply how you can take notes within your code. If we go ahead and apply this, you should see a 20 and a 50 simple moving average plotted onto your chart. So plotting this 20 and 50 simple moving average, as I mentioned, sort of nothing but a refresher course on what we've already covered. So now in this section, let's really kick it up a notch. I want to plot signals on my chart when these conditions cross, when these simple moving averages cross. I want a arrow pointing up when the 20 SMA crosses above the 50 SMA and down when the 20 SMA crosses below the 50 SMA. So what we're going to do is we're going to define these conditions. I'm going to define a buy signal as equal to when the 20 simple moving average, remember that we have initialized within the container that we named data, within the variable that we named data. So I can do data crosses above data 2. We haven't used this crosses above condition yet. All this is really doing is instead of greater than, crosses above will only return true on the bar that our 20 simple moving average actually crosses, for lack of a better term, above our 50 simple moving average. And that's what I want in this instance, because I don't want the arrows plotted on every single bar that this SMA is above this SMA, right? I only want it on the bar in which it crosses. Then obviously, let's go ahead and define our sell signal as the opposite when the 20 crosses below the 50. So we've gone ahead and we've defined our buy signals. Now we need to plot the arrows. So we're going to need to use our conditional if statement. If buy signal is true, then we want to plot the low of the candle because we want the up arrow to be at the bottom of the candle where the bullish cross occurs, and vice versa for the sell signal. So we're going to come down. We're going to declare new variables. We're going to declare them with the keyword plot because, of course, we want them to show up on the charts. We will name this variable the buy arrow, and then we're going to initialize it with a conditional if statement, and we are just going to simply say if the buy signal is true. For that statement that I just said in English to translate to the computer, all you need to type in is if buy signal. the computer interprets this as if this value that you initialized the by signal variable at is true, then it will do the following statement. Then the by arrow will be plotted at low, which is what we want. Now, for the other half of this if conditional statement, I'm going to teach you something new. We don't want anything to be plotted. If on the current bar, the 20 simple moving average is not crossing above the 50 simple moving average, we want the plot variable to not do anything, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and type it out. What we are going to do is else double dot NaN. What this is called as a whole is dot notation. NaN stands for not a number. It is a predefined variable of the double data type. And when you are referencing something related to something else, so once again, not a number is predefined within the double data type. So we must reference that in order for the computer to understand what we are talking about. If we just typed in NaN, the computer doesn't know what NaN is unless we are referencing its host data type. We utilize dot notation to do that. If that doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, first off, it's okay. Second off, in just a second here, I'm going to give another example of dot notation that'll make a lot more sense. Double dot NaN is really like one of the more confusing dot notations because you sort of just have to know what is within this data type to really understand it. And at the end of the day, I don't have any idea what is referenceable from every single data type. Of course not. I just have a small number of them memorized, double dot NaN being one of which, because it is extremely useful. So at the end of the day, if my whole explanation made no sense, but you can memorize that double dot NaN means that nothing will happen, you're good. You pretty much have the same level of knowledge that I have after 4+ years of doing this. So let's go ahead and jump down now and let's plot our cell arrow. Of course, if cell signal is true, then we want to plot at the high, else double dot not a number. This block of code that we just created here doesn't actually accomplish a whole lot. If I hit apply on this study right now, you'll notice nothing is plotting. Because all it says is, if by signal is true, then plot low. Okay, if the 20 simple moving average crosses above the 50 simple moving average, you want the low value plotted, and vice versa, you want the high value plotted. What does that even mean, right? Well, now we are going to jump down and we are going to make use of a new type of function. So far within this whole course, whenever I have referenced functions, it has been study functions, right? It has been calling in indicators that exist out of the box within ThinkOrSwim. Well, now we are going to introduce action functions. Action functions can be a little bit trickier than study functions because you cannot simply reference the study from within ThinkOrSwim to learn the name and the parameters of it, correct? But what you can do, if I wanted to plot an arrow using ThinkScript like I do here, I can hop into Google, as you're seeing on your screen now, and I could type in plot arrow ThinkScript. You want to look for this ThinkOrSwim Learning Center source, and you can click on the first link that pops up. Okay, what I'm getting here is the arrow up constant. But it gives you an example. Look, see the set painting strategy function in look and feel section. Okay, I want to see the function, so I would click on that, and this is the function we're looking to use, and this is the parameter we need to set, and then there is a list of constants that are accepted within that parameter. Do you see how useful the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center is? You can really look up anything in that way, or really, if you want to learn more stuff, just click through all the options over here on the left. Every like study function is under this studies library here under technical indicators. But if you want to learn what else is out there besides, once again, just the study functions, feel free to click through and learn in this way. We're going to use a lot more of these types of things throughout this course, but make use of the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center, especially when it comes to finding the names and parameters of these action functions. Back within our code here, we are going to call that set painting strategy action function, right? But it needs to be in reference to something. It needs to know what it is setting the painting strategy for. You know how to do that? I think we know how to do that. We just talked about it. How do we reference data types? How do we reference what a function should be assigned to? Dot notation. So we want to set the painting strategy of the by arrow as that arrow up constant. The by arrow is plotting the low, remember, if we get our SMA cross. We need to tell now this variable what it should be plotting. That is what we are going to do with this line of code. So I'm going to type in by arrow dot set painting strategy. And if I open and close parentheses and end that line of code, this is the reference material, and this is the action function that now is being referenced to this by arrow plot variable, which is plotting the low if our previous plot of the 20 SMA crosses above our 50 SMA plot. Now, you're getting an error thrown here because there is no default value for the painting strategy parameter. I talked about how all the study functions have default values. That is not true for most, if not all, action functions. You have to tell the function what you want it to do. So we talked about this just a second ago. I mean, I literally just looked it up and went over it with you, what the arrow up function is. Now, the arrow up, it is also a constant, so it needs to be referenced to something. Constants in and of themselves, the machine won't know what you're talking about. If I just type arrow up in here, the machine doesn't know what I'm talking about because this is, once again, a predefined variable within the painting strategy parameter. Just like NaN is a predefined variable within the double data type, arrow up is a predefined variable within painting strategy. So we once again need to use dot notation to reference this painting strategy dot arrow up, and we have no errors. And if I hit apply, look at that. We've got an arrow up when the 20 simple moving average crosses above the 50 simple moving average. All right, off the back of that little rant there, hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better, because I know for a fact you're feeling overwhelmed right now. This is a lot of stuff being thrown at you. You have so much support out there, and this stuff and the verbiage I'm using doesn't have to be memorized. You just have to know how to do it. And as you do it, I promise you, it'll get easier. Let's go ahead and wrap this up by setting the painting strategy for the cell arrow as arrow underscore down. Once again, referencing this constant within the painting strategy parameter. I probably spelt something wrong. I forgot the I in painting. That happens to me a lot. Once again, referencing the constant arrow dot, and I didn't type arrow dot down. There goes me trying to code and talk at the same time. Referencing the constant arrow down to the painting strategy parameter, referencing the painting strategy parameter to the cell arrow variable. Now, let's go ahead actually and hit apply, just ensure it is working correctly, and it is. When you get that 20 simple moving average crossing down, you get the down arrow plotted at the high. When it crosses up, you get the up arrow plotted at the low. Let me give you one more example while we're working in this code to really hammer this point home of an action function. We kind of can't see these arrows. They're very small, right? Don't worry, ThinkOrSwim has an action function to fix that. Once again, it needs to be referenced to the plot that we are looking to change. So if I'm going to reference the by arrow using dot notation so that the action function I'm about to call knows which plot it should be changing, I'm going to call in the function setLineWeight. This accepts a parameter, I think it's like 1 through 9 or something, that will determine the thickness of the plot. I'm going to set mine equal to 3. And if I go ahead and hit apply now, you will see that arrow get a little bit bigger. Let's go ahead and just do the same thing quickly for the cell arrow. If I can talk and type at the same time this time, nice, also gets a little bit thicker. Once again, how do we know the name and function of this parameter? We looked it up within the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center. Well, remember, I have this memorized. I've used this so much, I just have it memorized and can type it in, and I promise you, you will get there. Right now, you're intaking a ton of information. That's the point of a course, right? I want to give you as much information as possible for what you are signed up for here, right? But I promise you, you'll have this memorized eventually. But until you do, you can look up something like, how do I change the size of a plot using ThinkScript? This will pop up. You click on it, you get the name of the function, you get the parameter of the function. And guess what? This one's not telling you to use constants. This one's not giving you a list of constants, so you know you don't have to reference a constant as the function. And it's giving you a very nice and clean example here so you can see how you should use it. Congratulations, you just finished your first complex code. I told you all this was called plotting advanced indicators. Can I take a second here to just walk through each block of code so that we can fully understand and recap what is going on here? Using good coding practices, we initialized our values at the top of our code by declaring inputs, naming the variables short MA and long MA, and initializing them with the values of 20 and 50. We then declared 2 data points as plots so that they will plot on the charts, and initialized these variables named data and data2 with the simple moving average function with a parameter of length set equal to the variables that we defined at the top that were initialized with the values of both 20 and 50. This is plotting the 20 and 50 simple moving average on our charts. Then we wanted to define what our buy and sell conditions were, so we declared a buy signal and a sell signal with the keyword define. Because we don't need these to plot, these are simply so that they can be referenced within our plots later. And we defined our buy signal with the variable named data, which represents the simple moving average that we initialized under that variable data before, as the 20 simple moving average crosses above the data2, which is once again the variable we initialized as the 50 simple length moving average. Vice versa for the sell signal. Then it came time to plot that. Okay, we have our buy signal and sell signal. Now we want to plot. So declaring variables buy arrow and sell arrow, both with the keyword plot, we used a conditional if statement. If the buy signal is true, then we want to have a plot at the low of the candle. And if it's not, then we want nothing to happen. And we made nothing happen by being introduced to dot notation. We used not a number, and in order to use not a number, we had to reference the data type it was stored in, which is double. We did that for both the buy signal when it crosses above and the sell signal when it crosses below. We wanted to plot at the high, else have nothing happen. Then we had to tell these plots what they should look like, because at this point in the code, we weren't actually plotting anything, right? We were just plotting the low value and the high value, which already exist on the chart. So we utilized our first ever action function called the set painting strategy, but we once again had to utilize dot notation to let the function know what it was setting the painting strategy for, right? Then, within the set painting strategy, the accepted parameter is a painting strategy constant. The arrow up constant, once again, is stored within the painting strategy parameter. So we had to reference that in order for the machine to know what this data was actually in reference to. So painting strategy dot arrow up, this was for the buy arrow, painting strategy dot arrow down for the sell arrow. Then we could barely see the arrows. We wanted to make them a little bit thicker. So once again, using an action function of set line weight in reference to buy arrow, we set the line weight parameter to 3 to make it slightly thicker. Once again, set line weight in reference to sell arrow, set the parameter to 3 to make it slightly thicker. Did you think we were done? We're not. We're going to build a whole nother study within this section so that I may introduce you all to another concept. I have an idea for a study where I want to plot the current RSI on whichever time frame I'm looking at, plus the daily RSI. I think this will help give me a good idea when I'm looking at an intraday chart of what the current trend plus the daily trend is equal to really show me combined either strength or weakness. So I'm going to be plotting a current RSI plus daily RSI. Remember, RSI is best viewed from the lower section of our studies. What do we do in our code when we want something to be at the lower section of our studies? We make the first line of that code declare lower semicolon. Now, what I'm going to do just to improve readability of this code, I'm going to define a variable named current RSI, and I'm simply going to set it equal to the RSI function. I didn't say when I was requesting this code that I was requesting any special RSI parameters, so we will simply just open and close parentheses, which of course uses the default parameters of the RSI. Now we need to define the daily RSI, and this is where we get to have some fun with the parameters of this function. Let me just go ahead quickly and just type in RSI by default here so that I can go out and look at our RSI study, right? Remember, this is the easiest way to see our study function parameters straight through the study settings itself. We need to calculate this RSI off of the price of its closing bar. We're happy for it to still use price, but we don't want it calculating the price off of whichever time frame we are currently looking at. If it's not obvious enough already, if I haven't made this obvious, the RSI will automatically be defined according to whichever time frame we are looking on. If you don't specifically set a time frame, the ThinkScript code will auto adjust its calculations to whatever time frame you are looking at, which is actually a really, really nice feature of ThinkOrSwim. It makes code so that you don't have to update it every single time you want to go look at a new time frame or create dozens of different codes for different time frames. It's a really nice feature. But for the study we want to create, once again, if we're on the 5-minute time frame, we want to see the 5-minute RSI plus the daily RSI. So we need to find a way to have this second RSI calculated at the daily price level, the daily close level. Well, how do we do that? How do we figure out how that parameter set would work? Remember that our price data points represented by each candle, open, close, high, and low, have no required parameters. Therefore, you don't have to put the open and close parentheses after this function. It is a predefined function, so you do not have to define parameters. But it does have a list of parameters. So let's dive into the ThinkScript help page of close to see if there is a way that we can have our RSI price calculating off of the close of the daily bar, no matter which time frame we're looking at. On the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center for the close function, we can see that there is a parameter for period, which is returning the current aggregation. It defines the aggregation period for which the close price is returned. That sounds like something we may be able to take advantage of. And up here, you can see if you read the description, you can use both aggregation period constants and predefined string variables, day, week, blah, 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 as valid parameters for the aggregation function. Let's go ahead and take a look at what these aggregation period constants are. Guess what? There is one for day. If we come in and click, you can see the syntax aggregation period day defines the aggregation period equal to 1 day or 86,400,000 milliseconds. That's good to know. Thank you, ThinkOrSwim. And you can see here how you would set that up. Aggregation period.day, then you could call that in as your parameter for the close function. So, hopping back into our RSI parameters, we now know that there is a function within RSI for price that is set equal to close. Then we know that the close function, or should I say fundamental predefined data type, has an input parameter of aggregation period that we should be able to call to have the RSI's price based off of the daily close, no matter which time frame we're looking at. So if I hop back into my code here, remember, price was not the first parameter of RSI. That would be out of order if I were to just type in close. Therefore, we have to define that parameter with a price. Please don't autofill for me, ThinkOrSwim. Price equals close. Great. That is an accepted no error line of code. But we want to see the close aggregation period set today. So we are going to go ahead and open parentheses on our close data type here. And remember, period was also the second parameter within close. So we also need to define it. And then remember, there's a lot of remembering here, but remember that aggregation period was a reference point to the constant of day. I can't just type day in here and have it work because the machine doesn't know what that means unless it knows that it is referencing the aggregation period data type. Now, of course, in our plot, or what we want to actually show in the lower study section, is our current RSI variable. Remember that we saved as just whatever the current time frame's RSI is, plus the daily RSI value, which will now return to you whatever the RSI is on the daily chart. If we go ahead and hit apply, we should see that working as expected. Hit apply on the chart to get the common RSI to go away. We are now looking at our 5-minute RSI plus the daily RSI at 118. Note, if I change to 1 minute, that will change because the 1 minute RSI is different. We are now looking at 105, 103 as it ticks around here. Understanding how to set the aggregation period on a fundamental function such as close is an extremely powerful tool in your ThinkScript coding education, and we will be using it a lot more throughout the rest of this course. All right, you all were hit with a ton of information in this one. Probably deserve a coffee break after this video. Introduction to conditional statements. We've already been using if statements during this course, but I feel like I haven't taken the time to really delve into them and to really break them down. So let's consider this section sort of a breather. We're going to cover something that we've already talked about, so I'm not going to hammer you with more new information here. Let's just take the time to really break down if statements so that you understand exactly what is going on when using them and how they should be properly applied to your future ThinkScript codes. If statements are how we make our programs perform different outcomes based on different conditions. If a condition is true, then perform this outcome. Else, if that condition isn't true, then perform this outcome. That is the syntax of an if statement. If, then, else. Every single if statement you write inside of ThinkOrSwim must contain those three keywords. If, then, else. Let's take a look at this script example. We are calling in an action function named AssignPriceColor. This function accepts one parameter of color, and the outcome of the function is that it will change the color of your candlesticks to whatever the parameter is set to. Within this parameter, we are currently running an if statement. We have our if, then, else. If the current bar closes greater than a value of 20, then set the color of this action function to cyan, else color.current, which simply means to just color the candlesticks as expected within your appearance settings. If we go ahead and hit apply on this and back out, you will now see whenever this ticker that I'm looking at closes above a value of 20, the bars are painted to that cyan color. So, if condition is true, then perform this expression. Else, if anything else is true other than this condition, this is your catch-all. Else, do this instead. Well, say we went back to that example I just showed, and say we wanted to plot the color of the bars if they close less than 10 as yellow. So we want three separate conditions in that case. Above 20, we want the value to be cyan. Below 10, we want the values to be yellow. Else, we want the values to be the current color. We would need to use, in this instance, a nested if statement. So instead of having if, then, and then your catch-all else, you can use if, then, and then you can go else if condition true, then expression to, and then your else catch-all statement. So this is how you can have multiple conditions set to multiple outcomes within an if statement rather than just a single one. If I hop back into my script here, let's go give this example. So if close is greater than 20, then color.cyan, else color current. But we want instead else if the close is less than 10, then color.yellow, else color.current. So now if I hit apply, you will see when this ticker is closing less than 10, the price of that candle is painted to yellow. Notice how still we have if, then, else, right? We still have if, then, else. Then we just also have again on the back of that else another if, then, else. So it's all still laid out the same way. It just has multiple catches. You know, your expression number one, your condition number one, expression number one. Condition number two, expression number two. These are your catches. Hey, if these are true, perform this action. Else, if none of this is true, if none of this above is true, then perform this expression. And you can continue layering this as deeply as you would like to. I've just added another else if. So now, if close greater than 20, cyan. If close less than 10, yellow. Else if close greater than 15 and close is less than 17, then color.pink before our catch-all else color.current. You see, you can continue to layer these. I could put, if I wanted to, I could put another else if here. Just remember, every single if statement no matter nested, unnested, no matter what, must be if, then, else. Customizing colors and styles of plots. There's a reason I used this look and feel function in our last section, a little bit of an introduction to this one. However, we're going to get rid of this for now, go over some other stuff. We'll come back to that function towards the end. For right now, we're going to go ahead and declare a variable with the plot keyword so that it shows on our chart named SMA_14, and we are going to initialize this variable with the function simple moving average, calculating off the closing price with a length of 14. What we can do with this, utilizing dot notation. Remember, we have to use dot notation when referencing something. So we're going to do SMA_14 dot. And from here, we can begin to call in look and feel functions in reference to our variable named SMA_14. If it weren't for this dot notation and we just began to call in look and feel functions, they wouldn't know what to act upon, right? They wouldn't know what they were in reference to. Once again, that's what dot notation is doing. So the first look and feel function we're going to go over is set default color. This is a function that accepts a parameter of color and will, of course, change the color of, once again, whichever variable you are referencing. We're going to go ahead and set this to color.green. Remember, when calling in colors, you must, once again, utilize dot notation to reference the data set that they are stored in. The machine does not recognize green because green is not a stored variable directly within ThinkScript. Therefore, you must reference the color data type when referencing colors. Go ahead and hit apply. You will notice the plot on the chart of the 14 length simple moving average changes to green. Next, let's say I wanted to change the size of my plot. I don't quite like the width of my simple moving average. I want it to be a little bit thicker so that I could see it easier. If I come down, we once again are going to reference that 14 simple moving average variable, and we are going to call the look and feel function of set line weight. Now, while I am doing this, you will see me case capitalizing, as in other than the first letter, capitalizing the first letter of every other word. Just so you know, you don't have to do that. I could just type in set line weight with no captions. There is no case specificity necessary when calling in functions. You can type in any caps you want to, and it would work. Just a little extra tip there in the middle of this. If I go ahead and set this line weight equal to 3, that should thicken up my line a little bit. I believe the set line weight accepts variables up to what's the max? I want to say the max, maybe the max is 5. It looks like the max on this is 5. So you can go from 1 to 5 on set line weight to decide either how thin or thick you would like your plots to be. We're going to stick with the 3 for now. Let's say I don't want my 14 simple moving average to be plotted as a solid line like this. I'd rather it be plotted as dashes. So I know I'm about to use a look and feel function, so I know it needs to be in reference to something. So I have to reference my variable that is initialized with my 14 SMA called SMA_14 dot, and we are going to use the function set painting strategy. This function accepts a parameter of painting strategy. Now, as always, we can reference the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center here to learn about this function and the parameter itself. And it's important to denote this with this function and parameter set specifically because we can come in and see all of the painting strategy constants that we can call. We can see all of the information that is stored within the painting strategy data type. I said for this example that I wanted my 14 simple moving average to be plotted as dashes rather than the solid line. So I can click on this and see that the syntax to call in this constant value into the parameter is painting strategy dot dashes. And remember, since painting strategy is the only parameter this function accepts, we don't have to explicitly type out the name of the parameter. Painting strategy equals. The machine reads parameters in order. You only have to type the name of the parameter if you are referencing it out of order. Simple moving average, the first two parameters are price and length. That is also why in this example, I didn't have to type length equals 14. If I didn't reference close here, then I would have to type out length equals 14 once again, because 14 is the second parameter, not the first. Anyway, back to the point. Let's go ahead and type in painting strategy dot dashes, once again using dot notation because dashes is stored within the painting strategy data type. If I now hit apply, you will see that change made to our 14 SMA plot. Now, I just want to make sure I point this out as well. Notice how when calling all of these functions, we are not storing them within a variable. Look and feel functions within ThinkOrSwim are something called immediately invoked function expressions. Now, you don't have to have that memorized. I honestly had to look it up, had no idea it was actually called that. But it just means that they are functions that can run immediately when defined rather than needing to be stored within a variable. For example, if I tried to just run a simple moving average function, it would throw an error because this sort of function needs an invocation. It needs to be stored inside of something else, whereas these look and feel functions do not need to be. This section is not going to cover every single look and feel function available within ThinkOrSwim. But remember, from the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center, in this left-hand drawer, under ThinkScript functions, you can see all of the look and feel functions if you would like to learn more about them. And later on throughout this course, especially as we begin building strategies and scanners, we will be calling a lot more of these look and feel functions. But as always, you can find them in the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center. Click on what you'd like to learn about, learn the name of the function, learn the parameter exists, and how to set it up. Adjusting function parameters. We've talked a lot already in this course about how you can call study functions into your scripts. But I want to make sure in this section that you all have an exact understanding of what parameters are doing, how you can change the parameters inside of your functions, how you can reference the values that are shown to you by plots of these study functions. What you're looking at on your screen now is the code for the Bollinger Bands study that comes out of the box native within ThinkOrSwim. All a study is a mathematical calculation of parameters. It's like saying 2 plus 2 equals 4. In that instance, as the metaphor to our studies, 2 and 2 are both parameters. You could simply change that to 1 plus 2. Now the outcome is 3. So the parameters are plugged into an equation that provide an outcome. The parameters are plugged into an equation that provide an outcome. It's the same thing with studies. I've gone ahead and turned on the Bollinger Bands study. You see it running on the chart in the background. Remember now, we can click on this cog on the study itself and see the list of inputs, which double as the list of parameters. If I bring over the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center Bollinger Bands function guide, you'll see its list of input parameters that it accepts that you can customize and change. The list goes price, displace, length, deviations up, deviations down, and average type. If I move this back out of the way, does that look the same? Price, displace, length, down, up, and average type? Yes, it's the same. This settings cog here is how we can check the input parameters of any study within ThinkOrSwim. And as we change these parameters, if I wanted to base the price on open rather than close, if I hit apply, notice how these lines change a little bit. If I change the length from 20 to 100, hit OK, hit apply, notice how these lines change. So once again, that is inputs. The Bollinger Bands is the calculation, is the plus in 2 plus 2, right? The parameters are the values that you are changing in the equation. So now let's come into a new study and let's plot a variable with the name of data initialized with the function Bollinger Bands so that we can begin to look at examples of changing these parameters within our custom scripts. If I go ahead and hit apply, you'll notice a problem right away. Wait a second. These aren't Bollinger Bands. This is only plotting one line. What's up with that? Remember, Bollinger Bands have multiple plots. Back on the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center Bollinger Bands page, we can scroll down and see that list of plots. Of course, there is a midline, a lower band, and an upper band. So hopping back into our script here, what we are doing is we are only plotting the midline because that is the first plot. It will plot top down what the plots available on the study are. If we wanted to plot a different band, we would use dot notation to reference that data to the Bollinger Band study so that the machine knows what it's plotting. If I wanted to plot the lower band, I would type Bollinger Bands, open close parentheses, dot lower band. If I hit apply, you will now see the lower band of the Bollinger Band being plotted. So let's go ahead and I'll get rid of that for now. We'll plot our midline and then we'll go ahead and plot our data 1 equals to Bollinger Bands. And I'll do this as the lower band and then we can plot data 2 equal to Bollinger Bands. And I'll plot this as the upper band. Now I should have, what did I type something wrong? Hold on, checking. Plot. Good job, Trey. Plot data 2. Look at that. Real-time code fixes. Now, if I go ahead and hit apply, you will see your Bollinger Bands just as it looks when you apply it out of the box from your Edit Studies modal. But now, since we have to utilize multiple functions to run all of the plots of this study, if we wanted to change the equation, change the parameters of this study, we have to change them in each and every one of these function calls. We can't just change the parameters in the midline plot, else your lower band and your upper band will still be plotting based off of the default parameters. And you all remember from really this entire course how I've talked about it's best coding practice to not hard code your parameter values and to include them at the top of your chart because that's easier for readability and maintainability. That might not have made a lot of sense until right now. What we're going to do is we are going to input our parameters that we would like to customize for these functions so that when we plug them in to the functions themselves, they remain standard throughout and they can all be changed in one place rather than having to change it in all 3 places while testing. So for testing the usefulness of this study, I want to be able to quickly change the price that we are using to calculate our averages, the length and the number of bars we are using to calculate our averages, as well as our average type. So I'm going to go ahead and create 3 inputs. Our first input, I'm going to just simply name P. This is actually a pretty common coding practice as well to name your variable inputs as just the first letter of the input itself so that when calling it later in the code, it's easier to type in and easier to read rather than naming this like Bollinger Bands price. If I named it that, this might make more sense and be easier to read up here. But if you were creating a pretty complex code and needed to call this multiple times throughout your code, it would become very, very cumbersome. So it's kind of a best coding practice. It's sort of an opinion, but I'm just going to input mine with the variable name of P. And for price, this is your open, close, low, high. These are your 4 price data points. So I'm going to start mine by initializing it with the value of close. And remember, since we are calling in the variable of price and it is the parameter of price, and it is the first parameter of the Bollinger Bands function, we do not at this point have to explicitly type out price. If I simply put P in each one of these, the machine reads these as the price parameter for the Bollinger Bands function. Once again, hit apply. Close is the default value, so nothing will change. But if I were to change this to open, you will now see this change slightly. If I were to change this to high, you will now see this change slightly, etc. The next parameter we wanted to make easily customizable is length. So I'm going to declare a new variable with the keyword input, name the variable L, and we will just initialize it with a value of 10. Now remember, length is not the next parameter that the Bollinger Band study function is looking for. That belongs to displace. Remember, that means we need to explicitly type in length equals. We need to tell the machine that the L is set to the length of the function, because if not, the machine will read the parameters top down and will place that value in as displace if we do not explicitly tell it otherwise. So, comma after P to denote that we're moving on to the next parameter. And if we type in length equals L, we should be good. Go ahead and make sure that we implement this across all 3 of our function plots here. Length equals L. If we go ahead now and apply, you will notice a change. If I were to change this value to 100 and hit apply, you will notice a constant change of the upper, middle, and lower bands together. The third and final parameter we want to make easily customizable is average type. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to declare a new variable as an input. I'm going to name this one AT for average type, and we're going to initialize it with an average type variable. Now, average type is not a stored variable within ThinkOrSwim. It is a constant that is saved inside the average type dataset. What does this mean? We must utilize dot notation and let the machine know that we are referencing the average type dataset. So simply going to type average type dot simple. That will be what we initialize it as, end our line of code with a semicolon. Then, of course, the average type is also not the next parameter in the list for Bollinger Bands, so we must explicitly let the machine know that that's what we would like to apply this value to. So, comma, average type, set it equal to AT. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little easier on myself. Copy all this, paste, and paste. And now there are multiple different average types we could flip between. I could change this to average type exponential. As I hit apply, you will notice some change. There's an average type of weighted. As I hit apply, you will notice some change. There's an average type of hull. As I hit apply, you will notice some change. And of course, I didn't have all those average types memorized. I'm not some genius who has all this information stored in my head, and neither do you have to be. They were all listed on the ThinkOrSwim Learning Center on the Bollinger Bands function page under the average type parameter. In the exact same way that I utilized dot notation to plot the lower and upper bands of our Bollinger Band, you would need to use the same dot notation if you wanted to reference these values within calculations. That's true for any study that provides you with multiple plots. If you would like to use the value of any plot other than the first one in the list, you must utilize dot notation. So if I come down and we want to look at assign price color function, the same one we used in the last lesson, if I want to color my bars yellow when closing below the Bollinger Band lower band, I would do if close is less than Bollinger Band's open close parentheses. Remember, you have to open and close parentheses after any function call, dot, using dot notation, lower band, then color dot yellow, else color dot current. So using our conditional formatting, if, then, else, if the current bar is closing less than the lower band value, then color yellow. Now, also remember, this is sort of a different example other than what we are showcasing here. This will not use the same lines you are seeing on your chart right now because we did not drag these new variables into this Bollinger Band call. So you see how these two candles here are painting yellow? That's because the default Bollinger Band lower band must be at that level. Now, instead of doing if close less than Bollinger Band, I reference my data 1, which is my lower band variable that I have initialized with these parameters. If I hit apply, it should now... I'm sorry. I got rid of if close is less than, I got rid of the operator function. There. If close is less than data 1, now you see, according to the line that we have plotted on our chart, the price is yellow if closing below that. So the whole point of this is just understanding that dot notation is necessary for both plotting and in referencing data when there are multiple plots provided within a study. Working with price data. In this section, we are really going to dive into the 4 data points provided to us by a candle, that being close, open, high, and low. And we are going to talk about how you can utilize these price action data points in different ways to build custom studies. For our first code example, I'm going to do a little bit of a recap on what we've already learned in this course while applying new price data information into it. The first thing I want to do is some conditional formatting utilizing price data. I'm going to get rid of our demo line of code here, and I am going to declare a variable with the keyword define because I don't need this to be plotted anywhere. I'm going to name my variable a bullish candle, and we are going to initialize this variable with a value of close greater than open. This means that the bullish candle variable will be true if the current bar close is greater than the current bar open. What I would like this code to do is to plot an arrow at the top every time this bullish candle condition is true. So I'm going to declare another variable with the keyword plot, as this time I do want it to show on the chart. I'm going to name this variable bullish arrow, and we are going to do a little bit of conditional formatting using the if statement. If bullish candle, so if the close is greater than the open on the current candles, remember what is our next 2 keywords of the if statement? If condition, then expression, else expression, right? If the bullish candle is true, then we want to plot our arrow at the high. Else, remember, what do we do? What do we call when we want nothing to happen? Using dot notation, because we must let the computer know that it only exists within the double data type, we call double dot not a number, or NaN. Now we have to make use of some look and feel functions because we want the machine to know that we want to see an arrow at this plot. That is what we would like to see painted. So once again, using dot notation as we want our look and feel function to be in reference to the bullish arrow variable, as this is our condition where we would like the arrow to plot, right? Bullish arrow dot, and then we are going to call the function set painting strategy, which accepts a parameter of painting strategy, which is also a data type that has constant stored inside of it. So in order to call those constants, what do we need to use? Again, dot notation. So I'm going to type in painting strategy dot arrow underscore down, close our parentheses, end our line of code with a semicolon. If I now hit OK and hit apply, you will now see that on every single green candle, we are getting that arrow down. So we learned a little bit there about utilizing price data inside of operators and logical conditions. Now, let's go ahead and teach us something new about how price conditions can be called. Let's say instead of just, hey, is the current candle green? I want to see if the current candle is closing greater than the high of the previous candle. This is called offsets, and we can let our machine know that we would like to look at an offset by using brackets after our price action call, and whichever number we put within this bracket is the number of bars back the machine will look when performing this operator comparison. So if I want the arrow to be plotted when the current bar is closing greater than yesterday's high, I do high, open bracket, 1, close bracket. Now, if I hit apply, we should be seeing the arrow only on bars where the current close is greater than yesterday's high. Current close greater than yesterday's high, current close greater than yesterday's high, current close greater than yesterday's high. This can also be true. I mean, I can do the same thing. I could make it go, whoops, I missed. I could make it go from 2 bars back instead. Now, if the current bar is closing greater than the high from 2 bars ago. True. You see how this bar didn't close above this bar's high, but it did close above this bar's high. Now, we can utilize an action function here to add even more usefulness to this type of operator condition. Let's say instead of wanting to know whether our current bar closes above the high of a singular selected bar back, we want to see if the current bar closes above the highest point over a selected set of bars back. So let's say we want to see if the current bar is closing higher than the highest high out of the last 10 bars. We can do that by using the action function highest. If I just wrap my high here with this function, highest open parentheses, the first parameter of the action function highest is data. We want to be looking at the high price action as our data. The second parameter, once again, remember, separated by comma, is length. So over the last how many bars do we want to be comparing against this data set? For our instance, let's go ahead and say 10. Is the close greater than the highest high of the last 10 bars? Now, if you're going to use the highest and lowest function in this way, you need to make sure that you are offsetting it by 1. Because think about it. The current bar close is never going to be greater than the current bar high, right? So you have to offset this highest data by 1. You have to look back at the value it was on the last bar. Once again, does that make sense? Because if you don't do that whenever the high is breaking out, it's going to be comparing against also the current bar high, which of course the close can never be greater than, so it'll just never be true. Now, I'm going to teach you one more trick to this as well before we hit apply. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to plot a variable named whatever here, and I'm going to copy this in. This is the easiest way to ensure that you are performing your condition calculations correctly. Now, when I hit apply, I will see a line that is plotting this highest high of the last 10 bars offset by 1 so that we can confirm our arrows are are showing where they're supposed to be. If I go ahead now and hit OK and apply, you see that line being plotted on the chart, and you see the arrows being plotted when the current bar is closing above the highest high out of the last 10 bars. Just for continuity's sake, let me also show you the reverse example here. If we wanted to see return true when the close is lower than the lowest low of the last 10 bars, I will once again just go ahead and copy this because we want this plotted this time. If I now hit apply and OK, well, I guess you would also probably, if you were doing this, want the arrow up and plotted at the low of the candle rather than the high. If I go ahead and hit apply and OK, you now see whenever the current bar is closing below the lowest low of the last 10 bars, you are getting an arrow up plotted at the low of the candle, because remember, our bullish arrow, or in this instance, you probably want to rename it as well, our bullish arrow variable, though, is set to where the arrow should be plotted. And then we are utilizing the set painting strategy look and feel function in reference to that variable to tell it what to plot. Let's just showcase, of course, that you can compare price data with study functions. So let's say that we want to see if the close is less than the 200 simple moving average, for instance. I'm going to use the simple moving average function with the length parameter set equal to 200. I will once again, for testing purposes, copy that second condition into a plot. If we are closing less than the 200 SMA, I should be seeing my arrows up painted at the low of my bars. If we go ahead and come out now, wow. Oh, I'm looking at NVIDIA. Okay. About to say, wow, this chart hasn't been under the 200 SMA in a while. Yes, this is the NVIDIA daily chart. Yeah, it's been a while, but when NVIDIA was trading under its 200 daily SMA, you are seeing the up arrows plotted as they should be. And just so I can quickly showcase like the easiest way I would say to clean this up, because Trey, why the hell would I want an arrow every single time a bar closes below the 200 SMA? The way that I would choose to clean this up is that instead of using the less than operator, I would use the call crosses above. This will now only show if the current bar close is crossing above the 200 simple moving average. So if yesterday's close was less than and today's close is greater than the 200 SMA, that is the only time you will now see these arrows. Creating your first custom study using built-in indicators. We are at the last section of the basics of building custom studies within ThinkOrSwim. Now, there's still a lot more advanced techniques we're going to talk about in this course, as well as we haven't even touched on scanners or strategies yet. Still a long way to go, but I want to use this section as a time to make sure that we have hammered everything home up into this point. I'm going to talk through what I would like out of this custom study. And what I think would be an awesome strategy for you all is to pause this video after I explain this and attempt to create it yourself. At least see how far you can get and if you're on the right track. So what I would like this study to do, I would like for it to plot an arrow pointing up at the bottom of the candle if that candle closes above a 200 length simple moving average and below 40 on the RSI. So I'm going to go ahead and now and jump in and start going through how I would tackle creating this study. Edit studies, studies, create, of course. Let's go ahead and give it a name. Let's call it RSI and SMA Momo. That's what I'm going to call mine. So we were given in that word problem of the study that we would like to be made, we were given two hard values, a 200 length SMA and an RSI value less than 40. So my first immediate thought in my good coding practices, I know I don't want to hard code those values, into my functions within my code, I want to declare them as inputs as the top of my code. So we're going to go ahead and create those two inputs. We're going to declare a variable named SMA length with the keyword input so that it can be changed from the settings of the strategy. We are going to initialize this with a value of 200. We'll do the same for a variable that we will name RSI value. We will initialize this with a value of 40. These are now the hard-coded values that we have declared as inputs at the top of our code that we will use and call in throughout the rest of our code when we need to perform these calculations. I still don't need this plot line of code. The only thing I asked to be plotted within this study is the up arrows at the low of candle when the conditions are correct. So I'm going to come down now and I'm going to create my studies. I'm going to write a little comment in here using, once again, the hash symbol. The computer will not read this at all. This is just so we can take notes and, once again, make our code easier to read. And that's also why I'm going to create these studies explicitly. You don't necessarily have to do this. I could create the studies inside of the calculation if I wanted to, but for easier readability and maintainability, I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to declare a variable with the keyword DEF. Once again, because I don't need this SMA plotted, I'm going to declare a variable named SMA. We're going to call the simple moving average function, and we are going to assign the length parameter to, that SMA length variable that we declared earlier in the code. And then I'm going to create another defined variable. I'm going to name this one just R, and I'm going to set this equal to RSI, the RSI study function being less than the RSI value. So these are the now variables that we will look to call into our calculation that define what we are looking to compare: a 200 length simple moving average and an RSI with a value less than 40. Now at this point, we've really done all the work. So the calculation line of code itself is really easy. Let's go ahead and define our bool condition, and let's go ahead and set this equal to close being less than the SMA. The current bar is closing, the current bar is closing greater than the SMA we are looking for. We want above 200 simple moving average and RSI less than RSI value. Well, we've already done really that calculation inside of this study. So we just need to append these two calculations together so that they must both be true in order for this bool condition variable to return true. To do that, we are going to utilize our keyword and R, right? So now, if the current bar is closing greater than SMA, which is a variable that we have defined and initialized with a value of a simple moving average with a length that is set equal to the variable that we initialize as an input set equal to 200. So if the close is greater than the 200 simple moving average, and if R is true, which we have already performed that calculation up here, that the current RSI is less than the value of the initialized RSI value parameter we set up here at 40. Variable, should I say, not parameter. We set up here as 40. Great, we've done our calculations. Now it's time to get to the plot. Remember, we want to plot this arrow at the low of the candle if the bool condition is true. So let's go ahead and plot our bool arrow, and now we're going to need to use that if logical expression. If bool condition, if both of these things are true, then we want to plot at the low. Else, if it's not true, we want nothing to happen. We want to call that not a number value, but in order to call that not a number value, we must reference the double data type, as that is where that value is stored. Now, we have to tell this plot what it should draw. Right now, it's just plotting the low value, which obviously already exists, so it's not really doing anything. So we have to make use of our look and feel functions of set painting strategy. And remember, we must use dot notation to reference the set painting strategy to the plot that we would like it to reference to, for lack of a better word. So we're going to type in bool arrow dot set painting strategy. Remember, this accepts a parameter of painting strategy, which is also a data type that stores its own constants. So we have to type in painting strategy dot arrow underscore up, close this parentheses, end this line of code with a semicolon. Oh, we can go ahead and get rid of, this is the demo line of code I never deleted. We go ahead and get rid of that. Now, as I hit OK and apply, we should see, let me actually go ahead and do this as well. Let me turn on a 200 symbol length moving average just for testing purposes. Remember, I didn't ask for this to be within the study. That's why I didn't plot it in the study. I guess I could have easily just changed this to plot for the testing, but let's see now. Above the 200 simple length moving average, when below 40 on the RSI, you're getting the arrows. You're getting the arrows. You're getting the arrows. You're getting the arrows. It looks to be working as intended. You can see here, when below 40 on the RSI, but below the 200 simple moving average, you of course are not getting the arrows. This seems to be working as intended. Let's quickly cover everything you should understand at this point, because moving forward from this point, I'm not going to take the time to slowly and explicitly explain every single thing I'm typing in like I have up to this point so that you can understand the basics. At this point, when I say that I have declared a variable and initialized it with a value, you should know exactly what that means. I have declared a variable using the keyword either input, define, or plot. You should understand the difference between those keywords. Input being that it has been added to the settings cog on the study, and the values can be changed from here. Defined, meaning that it is simply stored locally within the code, and plot, meaning that it will be shown on the chart. That is the declare keywords that you should understand. Variable, you should know what that means. It's simply the name that you chose to declare, and it acts as the storage device for the value that you initialize. So when I say I'm declaring a variable and initializing it with a value, I'm declaring a variable and initializing it with a value. You should know exactly what that means. When I say the word function, you should know what I'm talking about. There are three different types of functions, being the study function, the look and feel function, and the action functions, such as highest and lowest, which we used in our price data lesson last. What you should know when I say the word function is a pre-existing calculation that exists natively to ThinkOrSwim that we are calling into our code. And you should know that a function requires open and close parentheses. You should know every function comes with a list of input parameters. And if you do not set any parameters, then the computer automatically uses whatever is defaulted. You should also understand that parameters will be read in order unless explicitly stated otherwise. So when calling in this simple moving average here, I had to type length equals SMA length, because if I look at my simple moving average study, click on the cog, length is not the first parameter. It's the second parameter. So if I didn't have that length equals, then instead it would try to use this value as the price parameter. And while it doesn't throw any errors, it will not do what you expect it to do. You should also understand dot notation, at least the basics of it, that the left side of the dot is where the value on the right side of the dot is referencing from. So for example, double dot, not a number. we have to call this because not a number is a variable that is not stored within ThinkOrSwim native. It is stored within the double data type. So we must reference the double data type in order for the machine to know what we are trying to get it to call when we type in NaN. And when we use dot notation down here for our look and feel set painting strategy function, we are referencing this function to the bool arrow plot that we initialized earlier. This is the variable that we declared and initialized earlier in the code that this function is in reference to. Then the set painting strategy parameter requires a constant as its value, and the constants are only stored inside of the painting strategy data type. So once again, have to use dot notation so that the machine understands that it should look for this arrow up value inside of the painting strategy data type. You should know your basic operator comparators, such as less than, greater than, crosses below, and crosses above. You should understand that they all can be used and the value they bring to your code, just like you should understand the basic Boolean condition operators and, or. And being both conditions on either side of the keyword must be true in order for the variable to be true, or meaning either condition on either side of this keyword must be true in order for this variable to return true. You should understand the conditional formatting and the if statement. If, then, else. You should have that burned into your brain whenever you need a variable to perform an action based on a condition, if, then, else. And remember, you can nest these if, then, else, if, then, else, if, then, else. You can nest it as many times as you want. You should understand this if logical formatting. Couple more basic things you should understand. Every single line of code that you want to be executed, that you finish writing, ends with a semicolon. Spacing doesn't matter. This code will run the same as this code. Spacing is simply for ease of readability for the human being. The computer doesn't care how your code is spaced as long as each line of code is ended with a semicolon. You should understand that capitalization does not matter. In just about all cases, you can capitalize any of these words, any of the names of any of the ThinkOrSwim keywords, such as the declaration keywords, the functions. These can all be capitalized however you would like. It'll still work properly. You should understand that your code is read top down. For instance, if I got rid of this RSI value and I instead plugged it in here at the bottom of the code, you would get an error where it is attempting to be called here because the computer doesn't yet know what this RSI value is in reference to, as it is attempting to read your code from the top down. You should understand that that is true and that you can only reference variables once they have been once they've been declared and initialized with a value earlier in the code. If you understand all of this at a conversation level, I don't expect you to be an expert on this stuff. I don't expect you to be able to teach a course on this stuff. But if you heard someone talking about it, you would understand what they were talking about. You're doing a great job. You've got a fantastic foundation laid out for the rest of your ThinkScript education, which we're going to continue into. We are going to build much more complex studies. We are going to build trading strategies, which we haven't even touched on yet. And we're also going to build complex and custom scanners, as well as custom scan columns. If you made it this far in the video, that is very awesome. Remember, this was just the first 3 chapters of 10 in the course. There is still 7 more chapters to go. So if you are interested in continuing to learn, I want you to use discount code COURSE at checkout right now, and you will save yourself $50. You're going to get the rest of the course for only $300. Think about that. That's only needing to win. I mean, depending on your size, it might just be needing to win one trade utilizing what you're going to learn in the course in order for it to be positive ROI. Anyway, daytradingstrategies.net, link down below. Go sign up today. If you did enjoy the video, you must have. You made it like 2.5 hours into it. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. With all that being said, I'll catch you all in the next one.